everybody, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared Berenstein, and I am here to answer all of your various questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, so this is a place where you can ask all of your political questions without any kind of fear of judgment or retribution or ridicule or debate. It is just honest answers to all of your good faith questions. So go ahead and put your political questions in the chat, and anything goes. If you are a Republican, if you're a Democrat, it doesn't matter who you voted for, it doesn't matter if you didn't vote. I am just here to engage with people in good faith on politics and potentially help educate some people about what the government is doing and the power that we all have as citizens to make effective change happen in our country and in our world. So throw your questions into the chat, and I will do my best to answer. What's up, Tyra, over at YouTube? Good to see you again. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat. This is not one of those political shows where I fight with people. This is not one of those political shows where I call people up and then we yell at each other and we try to own each other and then, we call each other stupid and uninformed, etc. This is not that show. This is the show where people are nice to each other and where we engage with each other regardless of what our politics are so that we can potentially start creating a shared reality where we all kind of agree on what's going on in the world as opposed to having two completely different versions of reality based on where everybody gets their news. Because, I think that there is the truth out there, and it's important that we all agree on what the truth is. Because depending on who I'm talking to, it could just be the entire conversation could just be trying to figure out what version of reality they are living in versus the one that I am living in. And I do not believe that that is productive for having a cohesive society and having a productive dialogue about what our government is doing. So yeah, maybe you're somebody who's new to politics and you keep on hearing terms that you're completely unfamiliar with. Get her done says Democrats are done. That's not a question. Get her done. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you have different politics than me, but actually be part of the conversation. So, yeah, if you got any questions about politics, just put them in the chat. Maybe you're new to politics and you're not sure who certain people are or what certain terms mean or what certain abbreviations mean. I am happy to elucidate you on that. And, maybe you see what's going on in the country and you're like, ah, man, this is terrible. I really want to do something, but I don't know what to do. That is 100% something that you can ask me about. I've got a lot of information about that. Ray Riker says, did you read the documents? You'll have to be more specific, Ray Riker, because there are many different kinds of documents that you could be referring to. So, yeah, any questions, just put them in the chat, everybody. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. Chris Smiley Face says, did our forefathers hate democracy because it put half the population in control of the other half? I don't know if it's productive to lump all the forefathers together. Some of them were abolitionists and some of them actively had slaves. And so, I'm sure that there were some founding fathers who thought maybe it was a bad idea that only landowning males should be the ones voting and white people specifically. But yeah, I don't think that they hated democracy. I think that they were trying to put together the kind of government where the people could rule over themselves. And, the genius of the Constitution is that it has the ability to be amended. Let's see here. Carmine says, how come President Trumpenstein gets presidential immunity but Obama would not for the fake hoax? That is an excellent question, Carmine. So when the Supreme Court ruled on presidential immunity, they put in basically an asterisk that said that presidents are only immune for things that they do in office that are quote unquote official acts. And who gets to decide what those official acts are? Well, the Supreme Court does. And the Supreme Court has a 6-3 conservative majority. They are extremely right wing. And yeah, so they get to decide if the quote unquote official things that Barack Obama did while he was in office get to count as official things. All right, Chris says, true, there was no mention of democracy in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. Okay. Jack Rafferty says, do you lean to a certain side, Dem or Republican, or more in the middle? I am a Democrat. Chris says, it's because the Senate was in control. I'm not sure where the Senate has blocked Obama from appointing a Supreme Court judge. That is accurate. Anna Banana says, LMAO, another new what? Dan Blackroyd, great to see you again, says this nonsense is not going to the Supreme Court. Yeah, most likely it will not. Aaron says thoughts on Trump's fake elector scheme in 2020. Likely illegal. Pretty sure illegal. I think some people have already gone to jail for it. I'm not 100% up on that, but I believe he's implicated in that, and then one of many reasons why he should be in jail right now. Devin Allen says, do you feel like Pelosi and the old school need to step down and allow a newer generation to grow? 100%, absolutely. Chris says, I'm a Democrat and Republican and a liberal and a conservative and a moderate 50 times before lunch. What an interesting thing to say, Chris. Jack Rafferty says, do you think Kamala would have done better in office? 100% without question. Liam Erickson says, why is Trump such a slimy piece of shit? Trump has been rewarded his entire life by being a slimy piece of shit, by corrupt and complicit governments and business partners and adversarial nations. He keeps on getting away with things because people keep on letting him get away with things because he works with people who have access to levers of power like Jeffrey Epstein. So, yeah, he has never suffered any consequences for being a slimy piece of shit, and so he's just going to continue doing that. Chris says the Republicans won't implicate Donald Trump, but we still have time for him to get sentenced by New York. But he won't be able to, Chris, if he's still in office. Chris says, I am from New Jersey. I've always known he's a criminal. I've also always known he's a criminal. Mason says, Trump is a great person, but is also a terrible person. I don't think he is a great president, Mason MK. And also ask a question. If you're worried about getting booted for having different political opinions than me, just ask a question and you won't get booted, guys. Mark says, too soft. Too soft what? Your spelling is incorrect. Jack Rafferty said, my great uncle's aunt's son's daughter's best friend's brother's second cousin is Donald Trump, by the way. Oh, sweet. Well, I would have exercised that dude from my family tree a long time ago. Noel Stradamus says, did we ever see Obama's birth certificate? Yes, we did. Excellent question so far, everybody. Pat says, what about Trump? Is he doing wrong in your eyes? Without question, he's been doing wrong for a long time. Things that are wildly illegal, unethical, unconstitutional, morally bankrupt. He's a fucking barbaric, monstrous, lying, corrupt human being. Carmine says, did we ever see Barry Soretto's birth certificate? I don't know who that is. All right, but welcome to the live stream, everybody. My name is Jared. I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to answer all your questions about politics. Nostradamus says, why did Merrick Garland let Trump go? That is an excellent question, Nostradamus. Pat says, so you didn't answer my question. This is about politics. I did answer your question. He is 100% doing wrong, and I said a lot of details about that specifically. But if you want me to go into more stuff, then ask me another question. So, Nostradamus, why did Merrick Garland let Trump go? So, there are a lot of things to consider when you're trying to parse together like Merrick Garland's inaction versus his action and like him slow rolling things versus not slow rolling things. The first thing that I would say, and I got this from Preet Bharara when he talked about being, DA and an AG and stuff like that, which is that we don't know what's going on in that office. We don't know what evidence they have. And so it's possible that they just didn't have enough to charge or whatever. There are also political implications. It is not nothing that Trump was the first president, to be indicted after office. And that's a big deal. And so you really got to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed because, obviously right-wing media is going to have a fucking field day, even if your case is fucking airtight, sealed to the max. Also, we were suffering from having a judiciary that was firmly in Trump's pocket with the 6-3 Supreme Court majority and a bunch of Trump psychopath judges like Eileen Cannon and Matthew Kacsmaryk and shit like that scattered throughout the judiciary at various levels. So, it was difficult. It was difficult to maneuver all of that. Now, my general feeling and the massive caveat on that is that I was not in that office, so I don't fucking know. My feeling is that Merrick Garland probably was way too careful and should have gone faster and more aggressive. But, you have to consider all of the various variables, all the things that we don't know, the political environment. Jack Smith did the work, but then the Supreme Court and a bunch of Trump judges blocked Jack Smith from actually accomplishing any of his goals, and holding Trump accountable. All right. Noel Stradamus says, we lack the courage a lot. What do you mean by we, Noel? Because I don't really agree with that. Carmine says, how come they get to use court records to abduct people, but block records to out PDFs? Because they're in charge, Carmine. Air Laguna says, I think the Democrats are too gun shy. Some of them are, but some of them are great and aggressive and very active and, very, very on point. Bayou Max says, who controlled the auto pen? Was Biden aware? Yes, Biden was aware. He was in control of the auto pen. Every politician uses the auto pen. That is not a real controversy. It is fake, ginned up bullshit controversy from the right. Nostradamus says, Democratic leadership should have had the courage to push Garland to push harder on Trump. I hear you, Nostradamus, and I agree that he probably should have been more aggressive. I like to try to have the humility of recognizing the things that I don't know and not being in that office and not knowing what evidence they had available to them and not knowing the other pressures that were being put on them. It's possible that I'm wrong, but 100%. If I had my druthers, he would have been more aggressive. Now, as far as Democratic leadership is concerned, there is a an ethical argument against that, in that the branches of the government are supposed to be separate. And so the way that Trump is putting pressure on the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies and, sue Harvard, and go after ABC and shit like that, that is not what America is about. Like, that is unconstitutional. It is wildly unethical. And so I believe it would have been extremely inappropriate for Congress to try to put pressure on Merrick Garland to go after Trump harder or, go faster or whatever. Nerf This Christian's Big Thrill says, what impact did Citizens United cause? Citizens United made it so that billionaires were allowed to have even more influence over our political process and be able to funnel unlimited amounts of dark money into various politicians' pockets, and in a way where we are never going to find out exactly how much or exactly by who. Let's see here. Consumer says, do you think your family should run for political positions, or should Bears not run for Congress? Bears should 100% run for Congress. They would certainly be better than every elected Republican. Earl Murphy Jr. says, I don't think he can release it. He's in full control of the government right now, so it's completely up to him. CG Bakes, great to see you again. So hello, as we speak, Levitt and Tulsi are formally accusing Obama of treason in a media conference. Well, CG Bakes, they're full of shit. The case is nothing. It will be laughed out of court. Stout says, thoughts on Zohran Mamdani? I like him a lot. I just need everybody in New York to recognize that the billionaire class is still going after him. So there's going to be a lot of bullshit and chicanery and malicious actions. They're going to use all their money and power to try to torpedo him either before the general election or after he gets elected. Nostradamus says, why can't we criticize Israel without being called anti-Semites? Because the pro-Israel lobby is extremely powerful. They put a lot of money into our political system and into our media. And so they have put a lot of weight onto various politicians to make it like a crime to criticize Israel and shit like that. But we have the power to change that. We need to elect politicians that will stand up to Israel. And, while there are definitely Democrats who fail in that regard, the Democratic Party is much better on that issue than the Republican Party is. Earl Murphy Jr. says, we don't know who is on the list. We can make certain assumptions based on, who took 1,000 photos with Jeffrey Epstein and who hosted a party with a bunch of extremely young girls. And the only two guys that were there were Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And, who sent Jeffrey Epstein birthday cards with weird cryptic messages about the secrets that they share. Going out there and saying that his really good buddy Jeffrey Epstein is a lot of fun to hang out with, and he even likes girls on the younger side, Alrighty, King Luffy says, thoughts on what the Democratic Party should do after losing the election? So I think that the Democratic Party needs to lean into the younger progressive wing of the party and not be so dogmatic about holding on to the old centrist gerontocracy. I'm sure that there are a bunch of very smart pollsters who really get into the cross tabs on the various districts in this country who will tell me that embracing younger, more left-leaning Democrats is going to be death for certain districts, House districts, or Senate races. I tend to fall down on the argument that we need to convince people, and we have a stronger, and the young progressives has a much stronger argument than the old centrists. But I don't think that we should be sitting back and hoping and praying that the Democrats do the most perfect things in the world to win elections. I think that we need to help the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is at a massive disadvantage, being out of political power, having much less access to political fundraising because all the billionaires are in the Republicans' corner. They have much less access to the kind of information spread that the Republican Party has because the billionaires control every information sphere that exists in our country and abroad, and they are going to do everything they can to either make people cynical and not vote or get them to vote for Republicans. The Democratic Party is a rainbow coalition, which is harder to maneuver than a monolith, which is much more what the Republican Party is. There's a bunch of reasons why Democrats are not playing on an even playing field, and not because the Democrats deserve us to do the work for them, but because our lives will be better if Democrats are in charge. We need to do the work of getting them elected, or, to put a more fine point on it, to unelect every single Republican so that they feel electoral consequences for all the fucking bullshit that they've been putting us through for the past couple of decades, specifically these past 6 months. Dan Blackroyd says, have you been following Katz Abu Ghazella's congressional campaign in Illinois? I have not been following that one, Dan Blackroyd. Eaton says, they have been in charge and blue cities are hellholes. Blue cities are not hellholes. They are much better places to live. We have better quality of life, better healthcare outcomes, better education. All of the worst cities to live in are in red states or in states that lean red. Nostradamus says, Jared, much respect, my brother. Let's chat soon. Thank you for being here, Nostradamus. I appreciate you. Wild Asadago says, our lives were horrible when Democrats were in charge. I don't know if that's accurate, Wild Asadago. I'm pretty sure that my life has always been worse with Republicans in charge. Let's see here. Wild Hasadago says, no, they're hellholes. I mean, okay, we got a real person with his whole ass name and face saying one thing, and random ass anonymous person who doesn't even have a fucking name or profile picture saying something else. So I know exactly who I trust. Josh G says, LOL, NYC is a dump. LA is a bigger dump. I mean, 100% still rather live there than fucking, Indianapolis. Seamus Dog says California is beautiful but ruined by blue. Yeah, you guys keep on saying that, and I just keep on not seeing any evidence of that. Swiftly Engaged, great to see you again. Do you think anything will come from this Obama distraction? I'm worried that the Department of Justice and the FBI are now currently under the purview of Trump sycophants, people that will do anything that Trump tells them to do regardless. And there are enough crazy ass right-wing extremist judges that are like sprinkled throughout the judiciary that, something could potentially break through and make it seem like there's something there when there is literally nothing. But, even if nothing does come of this, like, it fucking sucks when you are forced to work with a lawyer to prove your innocence about things, especially when there's nothing there. It's just all fucking bullshit, fake charges, drummed up from nothing. Mabel says, as opposed to Obama psychos. I don't know what you mean by Obama psychos. 2WX, whole bunch of letters, says, I live in Los Angeles, too overpopulated and expensive. If you have 1 million, that is considered average. Yeah, I mean, Los Angeles is overpopulated and expensive because everybody wants to live in places like Los Angeles. Jose Serrano says, thoughts on Israel starving Palestinians? It is barbaric. It is a fucking travesty. It is completely unnecessary. It's a manufactured crisis by the Netanyahu government. It's fucking despicable. And our fucking government under Donald Trump is currently supporting this. They are letting this happen. Donald Trump is fucking letting this happen. Marco Rubio is letting this happen. JD Vance is fucking letting this happen. So if that pisses you off, if you want fucking justice for Palestine, then you need to let them know by unelecting every fucking Republican that is currently letting this happen. Alrighty, Rick Willis says, kind of like Trump has had to defend himself for the last 9 years. I mean, the difference, though, is that, Rick, is that Trump actually did a whole bunch of crimes. He was indicted 91 times, and there's a ton of evidence to support those indictments, whereas there's exactly zero evidence to support the Obama indictments. But call me on that, because I got a lot. I can back that shit up 8 ways from Sunday. That's like one of those. That's one of those issues that I actually have a good amount of information on. Kuro says, why do you think Obama won his 2 terms? Because he was a great president. Swiftly Engaged, I already answered that one. Courtney says, can you break down the Obama witch hunt? I mean, so what Tulsi Gabbard and the Trump administration are trying to say is that Obama illegally tried to tank the Trump campaign by putting out false information about Russian interference. But none of that is true. If there were any criticisms you could make about how Obama handled the Russian interference before the election, it's that he was too careful. And Mitch McConnell, he had a meeting with the Gang of Eight, Obama did, and everybody agreed that it was important to put this information out there. But Mitch McConnell, who's a real fucking piece of shit, said, if you put this information out, we will say that it is a fake partisan attack. And they were worried that that would tank Hillary Clinton's campaign. So then they just played it much more conservatively. Yeah, all the information that they are quote unquote finding is all public record. It is all stuff that the Obama administration put out willfully, and they were playing it safe, and now they're being accused of not playing it safe. All right, Alex says absolutely, but the Democrats would have supported it as well. That is inaccurate, Alex. There are more people in the Democratic Party, specifically Kamala Harris, who were trying and are currently trying to stop what Israel is doing to Gaza. So it is wildly inaccurate to say that Democrats would be as bad on this issue as Republicans are. Sean Robinson says we need to cut the puppet strings from Israel. The way to do that, Sean Robinson, is to elect the politicians that the billionaire class are using Israel to try to elect, and that is the Republican Party. We need to send a message to the billionaire class that their propaganda isn't working on us anymore. And their propaganda is just telling us, don't vote and vote for Republicans. So vote for Democrats. Send them the message. All right, Courtney, you are quite welcome. There's more details to that, Courtney. There's one of the people that was sort of like lumped into that accusation was this guy named Ben Rhodes, who has a podcast called Pod Save the World. And I believe like the first 20 minutes, they just go all over the things that the Trump administration is accusing them of and exactly how much bullshit it is. But yeah, Marco Rubio signed off on the Russian, information that came out of the intelligence agency. And so, yeah, anything that they're going to tell you that all this information was hidden, but fucking Marco Rubio knew about it. And he was like, no, it's fine. It's totally above board. 2, a whole bunch of letters says American politics are scripted Republican or Democrat doesn't matter. There are people above them. It is true that there are wealthy people who have a lot of influence in our politics, but it is not true that Republican or Democrat doesn't matter. There are massive differences between the platforms, between the outcomes based on who is in charge, between the various politicians. So yeah, that both sides bullshit, all it does is try to make people cynical and get them to not vote, or it tries to water down how bad the Republican Party is. In general, the Republican Party is worse than people give it credit for, and the Democratic Party is better than people give it credit for. Add your nickname says, can you shout out my brother with autism? His username is Ice. I kind of feel like that's a trick, but I will 100% shout out your brother, Ice. What up, Ice? John says, Trump 2028. That's an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different politics than me. Just ask a question, be part of the conversation. Senior Goomba says, why don't politicians get penalized for taking money from corporations? For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not illegal, thanks to Supreme Court decisions like Citizens United. And number two, we do not punish them for taking money from corporations. So look at every Republican that is in office right now. They are being backed by massive corporations and billionaires. They were able to win their elections because massive corporations and billionaires gave them money to run their campaigns and put out ads and shit like that. And then we all either did not vote or voted for Republicans more than Democrats. And so they were rewarded. They were rewarded for taking that corporate money by winning their elections. And so if you don't want that, then you need to do the work of unelecting those Republican politicians. Lucy says, why don't politicians get charged for lying under oath? That is an excellent question. Like, they are not supposed to do that. I don't know why there are not more indictments for perjury for Senate hearings and shit like that, because we have a ton of evidence that these people have been lying in Senate confirmation hearings. My only guess as to why the indictments aren't currently happening is because the Supreme Court is in the pocket for the Republican Party. All of these people that are lying in these Senate hearings are Republicans. And the Supreme Court has already shown that they will delay and block so that Republicans don't have to suffer any, criminal consequences for their actions. And so it probably seems as though there's no point to it because, by the time the actual, trial would come around, the statute of limitations would be up or some shit like that. Also, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I'm pretty sure that because Republicans are fully in charge of Congress, that they have the only power to subpoena. Like, I don't think that Democrats in these committees can do subpoenas. Oh, excuse me. All right. Also, yeah, if they're going to get indicted for perjury, it would have to come from the Department of Justice, and that's under Pam Bondi, who is a Trump sycophant. Alrighty. Let's see here. Senor Goomba says, so can any police officer go arrest a politician for any of these crimes? I mean, hypothetically, I guess. But I believe that a police officer would get into a lot of trouble for that, because that's not really the method that you would use to go after somebody who is powerful. You know, yeah, normally you would just indict somebody, like let them know, like we are charging you with something. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm pretty sure that the only thing stopping a cop from doing that is just we don't do that to powerful people. Cuz 808 says, "Are you in SoCal?" I am in SoCal. East Coast says, "Why are the Democrats still crying about the election? Trump won. Move on." I'm not crying about the election. I'm crying about all the shit that Trump is currently doing, and Republicans are currently doing, that is ruining everybody's fucking lives. Kin Scap 93 says, "Do you think we will see federal legislation on abortion and birth control?" I'm not sure if any legislation would pass, but I do think that they're going to do shady shit to try to keep, like abortion pills from being mailed, or people traveling to other states to get abortions, or just like kneecap blue states' ability to perform safe and legal abortions. Leggy Eggy says, "Do you know anything about the election interference case in Rockland County?" I know a little bit. It seems pretty legit to me. I am the least skeptical that I have ever been that vote totals were potentially changed in 2024. I am not. I'm waiting for discovery to happen, though. You know, like it is. It doesn't. I don't believe it does anybody any good to insist that the election was rigged without definitive evidence. But I would say that I think everybody needs to look at that Rockland County case and recognize that our voting systems are fragile and susceptible to, chicanery, and that we need to be on the fucking phones with our elected officials to get them to change those systems to make sure that our elections going forward are free and fair. Cuz 808 says, "How are the Polynesians in SoCal treated by the modern California government?" I don't know anything about that issue, Cuz 808. Leggy Eggy says, "Same with me. I was happy when they said the case could continue." Yeah, we got to wait for discovery. Lucy says, "How far do you think we are from martial law?" I don't know. I only know that Trump and his group of, fucking lackeys in the government, they want to declare martial law. They want to have the powers of a dictator or a king. And so they're going to do everything they can to make that happen. And they're going to look for any excuse to make that happen. Senor Goomba says, "Why can any politician just dodge questions and not give a yes or no answer?" Because we don't penalize them for that, Senor Goomba. Like, everything that politicians do is to get reelected. Like, that's the long and short of it. There are some politicians who actually care about the lives of their constituents and really do try to make people's lives better. But even those people are like, I have to stay in power in order to help these people. And so a lot of their decisions are just filtered through making sure that they can get elected going forward. And so if they are doing things that you do not like, if they are not answering questions, taking money from corporations or shit like that, then you need to let them know that that is unacceptable behavior by calling their offices, visiting their offices, telling them that when they're at dinner at restaurants. I do not believe that we need to, be civil to people that are actively dodging us because they don't want to hear our criticisms and shit like that. These people should not be able to have a nice dinner if they're fucking all our lives over. They work for us. And, failing all of that, vote them out of office. Nolan says, "How would you grade Trump's presidency so far? Is there anything below an F?" Senor Goomba says, "How far does this corruption go and how far back did it start?" That is a really good question. It's everywhere. It's more a fault of rich people and the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, but it is in the Democratic Party. How long has it been going on for? An argument could be made forever, but it's just kind of like it goes up and down. The influence of corruption and grift and money in our politics is either more or less depending on who is in charge. Sean Robinson says, "Do you think Elon's party will be viable?" Mostly not. I think he might swing a couple of elections here and there, but it's never going to be like a legit political party. Nolan says, "What do you think needs to change most in U.S. politics?" We need to get the money out of politics. We need to make our electoral system more fair. We need to do something about all the massive right-wing propaganda that's out there. We need to get more people engaged. We need to get rid of the Senate potentially, get rid of the Electoral College. There are so many things that need to be fixed and changed. But yeah, I think, increasing funding to education so that more people aren't tricked by all of these conspiracy theories and, bullshit narratives. Yeah, it's there's a ton. There's a ton that needs to happen. We need to expand the Supreme Court, potentially impeach some of these Supreme Court justices. Let's see here. Ryan DeFalco says FDR was the worst president of all time. That is blatantly untrue, Ryan. Also, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Nolan says, what do you mean by money out of politics, and are you against democracy? No, I'm not against democracy, Nolan. What I mean is that because of decisions like Citizens United and because of other more obscure court cases that have opened the door for unlimited dark money contributions to political campaigns, it is now easier for billionaires to buy elections and to buy influence over politicians. And what that equates to is billionaires getting what they want out of the government and the rest of us not. It has led to massive income inequality. It has led to marginalized groups of people having to live in Superfund pollution sites, and all their kids are getting cancer and shit like that. I would argue that is intimately related to every single fucking problem you can think of in this country. And so, yeah, we need to reverse decisions like Citizens United so that we can have campaign finance reform. We need to make sure that the Federal Election Commission actually has some teeth so that when a billionaire like Elon Musk does wildly illegal campaign finance violations, there actually are some legal consequences to that. At the moment, you can do as much fucking bullshit, lying and cheating and stealing to win elections. So long as you win, there will be no, ramifications. You will serve no jail time so long as you actually win that election. So we have an electoral system that rewards people for just cheating as hard and strong and, harder, faster, bigger, stronger as they can. Because if they don't, then they might actually go to jail for all the shit that they've done. Alexon says, thoughts on ranked voting and proportional representation. I'm for them. And the Republican Party is not. And so even if you don't like the Democratic Party, but you like those things, the best way to get those things is to vote for Democrats. Nolan says, TikTok won't let me comment a certain amount of words, kind of annoying. I completely agree with that, but I think that it is, I kind of like the way that it forces people to be succinct. Peter Kukla over on YouTube says, any suggestions for blue voters in red states? Do the work, Peter. There are votes in every red state that can be got. There are people who can be convinced in every state. Almost every state is more purple than one or the other. And yeah, if you want to know more about like how to do that work, go to my Discord. I have a whole thread posted about it called The Work. I encourage everybody to do it, whether you are living in a blue state or a red state or a purple state or whatever. There are things that you can do if you are, too old to leave the house or scared of political violence based on where you live. There are things that you can do if you have, 4 kids and you're a single parent, or if you're, an 18-year-old with a fucking lot of gas in the tank and you're excited about getting shit done. There are tons of things there's a ton of work out there to be done, and I encourage everybody to do it. Nolan says, how do you feel about Charlie Kirk? He's a liar. He's a piece of shit. He's a con artist. He knows he's lying. He knows he's lying. Illmatic77 says, why do you think people say all lives matter when people say Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is a just cause. It is saying that Black people have been mistreated in this country, that we have complicated systems of racism in this country, that the police will harass and sometimes beat and sometimes murder Black people and suffer no consequences for that, and that is not okay. And so there are groups of people who do not want to change that, and so they say they smear the term Black Lives Matter. They say there's an invisible only in front of Black Lives Matter, but we think that everybody's lives matter. We think that all lives matter. So it's just bullshit semantics trying to deflate a just cause. Ricky O'Mahony, great to see you again, says, what does he lie about? Ricky O'Mahony, I don't have specific examples for you, but if you go to PolitiFact, which is an organization that rates, politicians and political parties and shit like that on the things that they say, I think something like 80% of the things that Charlie Kirk says have a ranking of pants on fire, like just like a massive fucking lie. So look for those. That's a great place to find those examples. Categorically, Kate says she also won, by the way. The truth is coming out. Check out By the Case. Categorically, Kate, it is possible that Rockland County will prove that Harris actually won the election, but we cannot rest on that. We need to still fucking do the work, because even if that came out tomorrow, there is nobody in government who is going to make any changes based on that information. All right. MLG says Charlie Kirk, known good guy, and then crying face emoji. Are you being sarcastic, MLG? Destiny says, why do people support Trump? Propaganda, misinformation, racism, greed, shit like that. All right. Mello says, do you think Obama should have done more as president? Yes, but he was our first black president. And when he was elected, it ignited a massive racist backlash in this country, to the point where he had to be so fucking careful. Ta-Nehisi Coates put it best. He said, for 8 years, Obama walked on ice and never slipped. So, Biden was able to get a lot more progressive shit done during his 4 terms, during his 4 years, arguably, than Barack Obama was. But Barack Obama was the first black president, and there were certain things that he would not have been able to do, because even centrist sources, legacy media sources, would have used the kind of coded racist dog whistle language to say, like, hey, maybe it's not okay that this black person is doing all this stuff, and it would have ignited an even more, insane racial backlash, And if you don't believe that there were unfair criticisms of the Barack Obama administration, I would refer you to the Dijon mustard, tan suit, and death panels controversies that were all fucking bullshit. MLG says Obama had incredibly horrendous foreign policy. In all fairness, 100% MLG. If you talk to the people that worked in the Obama foreign policy offices, they will wholeheartedly admit that they made a bunch of mistakes. They talk about the blob being this just like groupthink foreign policy thing that happens in DC that everybody gets sucked into regardless of how good your intentions are. But I give the Obama administration a lot of leeway there, because they were trying to do good in a difficult world, and Obama used to say something, I can't remember if he got it from somewhere or if it was an Obama original, but he said, we need to govern the world as it is as opposed to the world that we want it to be, or something, just basically calling out how complicated a lot of these issues are and how difficult it is to have perfect foreign policy. Mello says, even if Obama failed, I feel he could have tried harder and set the tone for the left long term. Yeah, potentially, Mello, but we're talking about in America that was over 10 years ago, which means that it was 10 years ago more racist, 10 years ago less progressive, 10 years ago less, knowledgeable about the malfeasance of the Republican Party. So, in hindsight's 2020, as they say. Sean Robinson says, J.D. Vance had almost no experience in my home state before VP. How? Corruption, misinformation, propaganda, etc. Devi GT says, do you think voting is an illusion? No, I do not. There are people alive today because people voted for Barack Obama and Democrats because they passed the Affordable Care Act. And there are women who are dead today because people voted for Trump and Republicans and they passed draconian abortion bans that killed them. Those people will tell you that voting makes a difference. There are people suffering right now in fucking Alligator Auschwitz in Florida and in CCOT in El Salvador who will tell you that voting 100% makes a difference. All right, over on YouTube, we got John Abbott. Do you think Elon's party has the potential to be as damaging to the GOP as Roosevelt splitting the vote in 1912 did back then, or do you think it will be more like Perot's old Reform Party? I think it'll be closer to Perot's old Reform Party. I think mostly it might swing a couple of seats. I think the closest analogy will most likely be the Tea Party, where we just get a fresh batch of really shitty new versions of Republicans, the way that we got Ted Cruz. Gator says, how do you feel about civilian gun ownership? I'm aggressive against, I'm aggressive in favor of more stringent gun control, but I recognize that even other people on the left do not feel the same way as me. I think we can all agree that there's too much gun violence in this country and that we should do something about it. So my watered down take on gun control, removing my more aggressive stance would be, why don't we have gun licenses, mandatory gun licenses? Why don't we have mandatory gun insurance? Why don't we have mandatory gun safety classes that need to be renewed every 4 years? Like, why don't we make gun ownership look more like car ownership? A car is a dangerous thing, and so we make people prove that they have the ability to handle it before we let them do that, and we make sure that they have insurance so that if anything wrong happens, there can be some sort of justice afterwards. All right. Alexon says Switzerland is just as armed as the U.S. The difference is the regulation and culture around it. Completely agree with that. Let's change the regulation. Let's also change the culture. Elias says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. User a bunch of numbers says, because insurance is a scam. Not all insurance, just health insurance. Women were made to fuck, says none should have been invented. I believe you're talking about guns and bombs and shit like that. Yes, but that's the world that we live in currently. Please and thank you says, can I come up? I almost never have people come up, please and thank you, but ask a couple of questions, prove to me that you are here in good faith, and maybe I will change my mind. Nolan says, do you think Americans need to understand more about policy? 100%. I think more Americans need to be educated and up on what their government is doing. Alrighty, scrolling up. Let's see here, scrolling up. Sean Robinson says, Epstein will never be released because, well, he's dead. So, there we go. Women were made to fuck, says Jarrett has the Democrat look. I think what you mean is I look like a fucking sexual powerhouse. I look like somebody who fucks and has, and that is the reason why I look like a Democrat. Lesbian Ann says Ted when he was running for president. Ted when he was running for president? Not really sure what you're referring to there. G. Myers says, if this Epstein thing is a problem now, why wasn't it a problem with Democrats in power? So the Democratic Party never said to their voting base that they would release the information around Epstein when they got elected. The person who was in charge of the Epstein information during the Biden administration was Christopher Wray, who was a Republican who was appointed that position by Donald Trump. So if you'd like to know why Christopher Wray, the Republican who was appointed by Donald Trump, did not release any information that he had about Epstein to the general public, you would need to ask a Republican. All right. AJ Morent says, shout out this afternoon, Jarrett from Chicago. Oh, I love Chicago. Great city. All right. Please and thank you says, where does your expertise on politics flow from? I was never into politics before. I was always really nervous about trying to get into it. I always felt like I was behind. And then I just started learning things through osmosis. I became radicalized by, working a working class job and, discovering all the ways in which our economic system and electoral systems were stacked against people like me. And I started looking at the politicians who were doing the good work and noticing that it was almost always coming from the left and the bad shit was almost always coming from the right. And so then I started learning, picking up little things here and there, and started being able to do things like read a newspaper and actually understanding who the people are and what the things they're talking about are in there. But I'm not like a poli-sci major or anything like that. Alrighty. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Please and thank you says, so before you started your political journey, you had no real affiliation. No real affiliation. I could have been convinced that either side was good. But in high school, I learned about climate change and I learned about environmental protection and the way that, factory farms are terrible for our health and shit like that. And I read enough and learned enough to recognize that the Republican Party was the one that was sort of like allowing this to happen, and the Democratic Party was the one that was kind of trying to stop it from happening. And so I was like, all right, seems like I'm a Democrat as opposed to a Republican. All right, CDM says, love seeing content creators that come with actual facts. The workers of this country need more. Thank you, CDM. I appreciate that. Sean Robinson says, should AIPAC register as a foreign entity? I think so. Boomer Kathy says, do you think Tucker Carlson will run for president? I do. I think that's part of the reason why he's doing this faux populist. Oh, man, rich people have too much money. You guys ever notice that kind of thing? Meanwhile, he's been fucking S-ing the billionaire D for, God knows fucking how long. He's a fucking, Mayo heir or some shit like that. He's old money, Alrighty, please and thank you. Says, in using your journey thus far, how do you feel about prognosticating what's to come? I try my best to not make any predictions. I advocate for people doing the work to make the kind of changes that they want to see in the future. Like if you're asking me who's going to win the midterm, I'm just going to say do the work. Do the work to get the seats that you want to see. If people ask me who do you think is going to be the nominees in 28, I always go, I don't really give a shit about 28. I'm focused on 26. But there are a handful of things that I feel confident, a handful of predictions that I feel confident making, like, for example, that Donald Trump is 100% going to try and stay in office until he dies, either by running for a third term or declaring martial law and canceling elections or some other shady, shitty mechanism. Alrighty, let's see here. Okay, please and thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations, please and thank you. All right, sometimes this takes a minute though. All right, thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you for all of the great questions and for all the great gifts and everything. We still got about 15 minutes left in the stream, so plenty of time to ask questions, plenty of time to get into shit. Categorically Kate says Trump won't last until December. Teal will pull him. That is an example of the kind of prediction that I do not care for, Categorical Kate. Nobody knows that for a fact. But yeah, he may survive, he may not survive. He might get 25th Amendmented, he might get not. Sean Robinson says there will be midterm change after nothing on 9/11, Epstein and JFK files. Again, Sean Robinson, don't make predictions. You don't know that. If that's what you want to happen, then do the work to make that happen. Brookie's Den says, "How is what Obama did considered treason, but not what Trump did? Therefore, Brookie's, first of all, what Obama did not mean is not treason. It is fake what the Trump administration is saying about him doing treasonous things, and what Trump did was treasonous, 100%." All right, Categorically Gate says not a prediction, just a vibe. Well, I think you need to rephrase it then. Hunter says left or right? Left. Scott Clower says Murdoch has a lot more info than just the birthday cards. Well, from your lips to God's ear, let's fucking hear about that. Gavin Hanscom says, "Oh my God, ask me anything about politics, then lie to your viewers." I'm not lying, Gavin Hanscom. Do you think that there's anything that I have said that has been inaccurate so far? I wait on bated breath, Gavin. All right. Let's see here. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Please and thank you. Yeah. If you wanna request again, I'll let you up because you appear to be here in good faith. All right. Boomer Kathy says Obama administration has the right to investigate whatever they want. The Obama administration has the right to investigate whatever they want. Boomer Kathy, I think I recognize you from before. I think you might be one of those people that is not here in good faith. Where are you? All right, TBD on Boomer Kathy. Courtney says, "Did you watch the most recent Jubilee debates? If so, thoughts?" I love. Oh, Boomer Kathy, I might be thinking of somebody else then. But let me just comment on that one thing that you said. Obama administration has the right to investigate whatever they want. So you are technically right, but the White House and Congress are supposed to be separate from the judiciary. So it is inappropriate and unethical for Obama to tell the FBI or the DOJ to investigate anybody. But whoever was in charge of the FBI, whoever was in charge, what the fuck was his name? Comey. Comey was able to investigate whoever he wanted. Alrighty, let's see here. Courtney, yes, I did watch a little bit of the most recent Jubilee thing, but I hate debates. I hate it when people just yell at each other. I love Mehdi Hassan. He's fucking whip smart. He's an excellent debater, but he was just yelling at people, and they were yelling back at him. And I just can't stand shit like that. So I wish that he had done a little bit more outreach as opposed to trying to own people, because the win was there. Like, it's not hard to argue why fascism is a bad thing. Alrighty. Boomer Kathy says exactly Obama administration meaning his DOJ. Yes, Boomer Kathy. The only reason why I clarify that, Boomer Kathy, is because I have people on here who say things like, why didn't Biden do more to throw Trump in jail or something like that? And then I have to explain, like, well, it's not appropriate for the president to talk to the DOJ. That's the reason why what Trump is doing is so fucking psychotic right now. Danny is terrible, but lots of love for you, Boomer Kathy. So glad that you're here. Danny is terrible says, "What do you think will happen with this Maxwell stuff?" I am worried that the Trump administration and his DOJ are doctoring things right now. I am worried that they're putting political pressure, that they're putting pressure or making a deal with Ghislaine Maxwell to alter her testimony to only indict people that Donald Trump does not like, and use that as a political cudgel, and then just pretend like he had nothing to do with Epstein and never flew on his plane and never hosted a party that was just them, the two of them, and a whole bunch of young girls, and never barged into a fucking dressing room with a bunch of women who were underage because he technically was able to. Yeah, I'm worried about all of that stuff. Claire says, do you think Trump directly asked Paramount to cancel Colbert? That's a really good question. That's a really good question, and I don't know. But Trump has made his enemies clear to everybody, so everybody knows who to punish if they want to curry political favor with him, and they know that he will respond in kind. So whether he asked for it directly or not, he basically asked for it directly. Gavin Hanscom says Democrats only care about Epstein when it's politically motivated. Where was this during Biden? Gavin, if people were asking for it during Biden and they made it known to their politicians, then maybe they would have done something about that. I will say once again that the one person who was in charge of this information during the Biden administration was Christopher Wray, who was a Republican appointed by Trump. So if you would like to know why the Republican Trump-appointed Christopher Wray did not release the Epstein information during the Biden administration, you need to ask your fucking Republican representatives and Christopher Wray himself. Hunter says, why do you lean left? The Democrats have the better platform. They have a better record of governing. They have better politicians. They have better policies. All right. Isaiah says, thoughts on DSA gaining power? I've heard a lot of negative things about individual chapters of the Democratic Socialists of America. I do think that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is better than the more centrist wing, that the younger, the younger guard is better than the old guard. And the DSA seems to be a little bit more intimately involved with the younger progressive wing. And so I support that. And I don't expect my political organizations to be perfect. And so while I'm sure that individual chapters can be called out for negative things that they have done or toxic culture or whatever, I think it's a net positive, basically. Gavin Hanscom says, under seal, how Trump wasn't elected until 2016. They could have got him way before he ran. Are you aware that Epstein was indicted in 2007, and it was a Republican named Alex Acosta who gave him his sweetheart deal in Florida? Alex Acosta was then named Trump's labor secretary, I believed. Yeah, Trump and him have the exact same lawyer, fucking Alan Dershowitz. So yeah, he then got a sweetheart deal. He was able to go to jail for a weekend or something like that, and then he was just able to go out there and start being a predator again. And then he was finally charged during the Trump administration, and there we go. So if the Trump administration wanted to release that information, it would have during the first term when he was indicted and finally sent to jail. Alphabet Soup says, when would you say the shift from bipartisan politics to more anti the other side began? Was it post-Clinton? That's a really good question. I believe if I had to put my finger on it, I would probably say Reagan, the way that he started talking about Democrats being like this and then right-wing, and then he undid the Fairness Doctrine, which made things like, right-wing talk radio and Fox News a thing, and then they started smearing Democrats a lot harder. I would say it probably started there. I think that probably the death shot was Obama getting elected and Mitch McConnell being Senate Minority Leader, basically deciding we are no longer the party of Republican politics. We are now the party of Democrats bad. And we will stop what the Democrats want to do. And when we were in power, we would just do what the billionaires want us to do. All right. Gavin Hanscom says, if late night shows lose $40 million a year, why continue to run them? They've ruined television. There is value besides money, Gavin Hanscom, and it is potential that there is value to having the most popular late night show in the country, the Colbert Show. But yeah, regardless of if it was losing money or not, the connection between canceling Colbert, getting rid of that show, and the political favor that Paramount wanted from Trump and Trump's ability to be swayed by things like that is absolute. It is clear. It is obvious. Alrighty. Crazy Monsoon says it really goes as far back as Nixon. I believe that. Alrighty. JMO says that Newt Gingrich carried that torch. That is 100% accurate. Left to Burn says, should communities defend their way of life from the federal government? I don't advocate for any kind of violence or property destruction, Left to Burn, but I do believe that people have the power to have the kind of government that they want to have. And so I encourage everybody to be involved, to fight, to protest, to strike, to boycott, and recognize that if we are a nonviolent movement, then we win. Historically, we always win. If we get 3.5% of the population to be nonviolent protesters, then we win. And, we just have to elect better politicians as well. If you want more information on how to do the work, go to my Discord. Link is in my bio. All right, Flip says, this guy doesn't understand that businesses need to turn a profit to survive. No, I understand that. But Paramount is a massive conglomerate that has other shows and other businesses under its purview. So they do not need to make a profit off of every single thing that they do. Sometimes you have what's called a loss leader, meaning you put more money into something than you're getting out of it so that you can get prestige or get new audiences, etc. Have a good mouthpiece, that sort of thing. Isaiah says, what's the future of the Democrat Party in your view? I mean, if I had my druthers, it would all be the young progressive wing, but I don't make predictions, so I don't know if that's what's actually going to happen. Or even if that would be better. There are plenty of pollsters out there who will tell you that there are certain districts in certain states where progressive Democrats die, the same way that there are certain districts where centrist Democrats die. Claire says they also use those shows to promote their movies. That is another value that they get from that. Gavin Hanscom says, seems pretty bizarre to do so knowingly. It costs more to produce. Yeah, Gavin, again, there's other value besides the money you put into something, Do you ever go to Restaurant Week, Gavin Hanscom? Answer me that. Prove to me that you are actually a person who is here in good faith. Have you ever been to Restaurant Week? All right. Buy It Handmade says, Trump revoked EMTALA guidance. Is it permission to let women die in ER rooms or just cause chaos? ¿Por qué no los dos? Buy It Handmade. Why not have both? If we can hurt poor people by giving emergency rooms the ability to deny care for whatever fucking reason you want, whether it is a woman that you don't want to give a medically necessary abortion to, or just you're a racist, there's a brown person you don't want to take care of or whatever, you have a moral objection to treating somebody who's overdosing on opioids. Every piece of that is good for the secret Trump agenda, which is fuck everybody besides me and my billionaire friends, create chaos. Cooling Water says, will America recover from the damage that the Republican Party is doing right now? It will if people do the work. Cooling Water. And if you want to know what the work is, check out my Discord. I have a whole thread posted about it. Swiftly Engaged says, I'm headed to Austin to attend a rally to protest this redistricting scheme. That's great, Swiftly Engaged. Thank you for being a part of the process. All right. TJ William Shower says, politically and spiritually, I would love to interview you for my project. It does mean that I would PR or something. TJ, send me a DM. My DMs are open. I'm always willing to be interviewed. Future America says, do you think a third party will win any seats in Congress or any local governments in the 2026 midterms? I would say most likely not. I don't make predictions, but if I had to guess, I would say that maybe Elon Musk's new party could pick off a couple of seats here and there from the Republicans, but there probably won't be any green candidates, or socialist candidates that take any seats. That's my guess. Alrighty. M Marino 11 says, do you think women will lose full access to reproductive care, including abortions? I know that is what Trump and the Republican Party are going to try to do. I don't know if they're going to be successful. Alrighty, let's see here. Gavin Hanscom says, Restaurant Week. Yes, have you ever been to Restaurant Week? I don't know where you live, but there's a thing that cities do called Restaurant Week where fancy restaurants will have special menus that are much less expensive than their regular menus. Have you ever been to one of those? I'm guessing by your question that you have not, because you don't even know what I'm talking about. Scrolling down to the bottom, Hush says, yo, what do you think of Project 2029? I haven't really dug into it, Hush. I am glad for any left-wing response to Project 2025. Let's get our platform and our policies out there so that people recognize the kind of country they could have if they just elected better politicians, if they just unelected every Republican and replaced them with better politicians. Alrighty. V.S. Gonzalez says, what would disqualify Obama from presidential immunity? Excellent question, V.S. So the issue with the presidential immunity ruling from the Supreme Court was that they put a caveat in there that said presidents are only immune technically for things that are official acts. Now, who gets to decide what an official act is? Well, the fucking Supreme Court. That's who. And the Supreme Court, of course, has an extreme right-wing bent right now, where 3 of the judges were sat by Trump. They are extremely right-wing, and there are a lot of them. It's a 6-3 majority. So basically what that means is If it's Democratic president doing things that we don't like, it's not an official act. If it's a Republican politician doing something that we do like, it is an official act. They basically made it so that Republicans can do whatever they want and Democrats can't. That's the long and short of it. Alrighty, thank you everybody for these great questions, for this great engagement, for all the gifts, for all the likes, for all the shares. I appreciate any support that you guys give me, whether it is the free kind or the not free kind. I don't know what says not gonna some Republicans be saying they're Christian but be doing anything but obey Christ. That is completely accurate. IDK. Cooling Water says, have you heard about Project Esther? It sounds like The Handmaid's Tale or The Hunger Games. I haven't heard about Project Esther. Robbo925 says, good to see you, sir. Good to see you too, Robob. Robobob. Yeah, if there are any questions that you guys think of later, or, there's anything that you're unclear on, that comes up later, my DMs are open and you can always email me through my website. I have a very open policy. My project of unelecting every Republican and getting more people engaged and activated in politics, it does not stop when the live stream stops. So do not be shy about reaching out through my websites, through my DMs, through my Discord. I want to help you be part of the solution. Alrighty. Gavin Hanscom says, thou shalt not kill. Dems had abortion trailer clinics outside the DNC. I don't believe that is accurate, Gavin Hanscom, and you have proven to me that you are not a real person, so you are out of here. Congratulations. Alrighty. RJ says, it is 2:21 p.m. here, and SCOTUS is split 6-3, but that is not true. 45 said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. Not really sure what you mean by that, RJ. VS Gonzalez says, who will be handling Bondi's July 18th request from the grand jury to release the docs? I don't know about that, VS Gonzalez. I have not pulled on that thread yet. But if you send me a DM to remind me, I'll do a little research and try to have that for you next time. Spiritually Sexy says, oh, Jesus, you need to read Project Esther. Man, Spiritually Sexy, I feel like it is just going to make me mad, but... that hasn't stopped me from reading that shit before. So, what are we going to do? Droz.com says, I'm new here. What is your political party? I'm a Democrat. Alrighty. But thank you, everybody, for being here. My normal streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. My live streaming schedule and my stand-up schedule can be found on my website, jaredberenstein.com. M. Hatley says, thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge. Courage. You are definitely committed and care. I appreciate you saying that, M. Hatley, and I hope that you are part of the solution, that you are doing the work. Everybody who's watching right now, let me know in the chat if you've been to the Discord, if you've seen the thread called The Work, if you've read it, if you've seen things on there that vibe with you, if it's given you any ideas for work that you can do in the future. I would love to hear about that. And if you have any other ideas for what the work can be, like put it in the Discord or put it in the chat here, I'm 100% down for adding things to the list. Carmine says, U.S. judge rejected bid to unseal Epstein. Who would have thunk? Oh, I'm really curious who that judge is that did that. I see the Rex in the Discord, and your book is still not in there. I'm never going to recommend my book to people. All right. Scott Collar says Trump's on the Epstein list more than Epstein. That's really funny. Robob925 says, share the details on the Discord in chat. I don't know how to do that, but I'm 99% sure that if you go to my bio, that the information will be there. So yeah, let me know in the chat if you guys have seen it, what you guys think about it, if you've done any of those things, and if there are other things that you recommend putting on there. Because if you're looking for things to do, the Discord is a great place for it. If you're looking for podcast recommendations, or if you're looking for book recommendations, the podcast is a great place for it. I just finished reading Careless People about Facebook, and it's fucking infuriating. It is exactly as shitty of a company, exactly as damaging, exactly as careless, exactly as we don't give a fuck how many people get hurt or killed so long as we make more money as you fucking thought it was. It is fucking bananas. Claire says, I use the 5 Calls app to contact reps. That's excellent, Claire. I'm so happy to hear about that. Alrighty, everybody. Looks like comments and questions are kind of slowing down a bit, so we are definitely going to wrap things up. Spiritually Sexy says, didn't Zuck steal the idea for Facebook from someone. Yes, according to the movie The Social Network, I believe that he stole the idea from the Winklevoss twins. They settled out of court. So I don't know if we'll ever actually find out the truth about that. But yeah, that tracks to me. That tracks 100%. Alrighty, everybody. Thank you for being here. Unless we get any more questions or comments to respond to, I'm going to start wrapping up and just say once again to please do the work, because the only way that we get out of this shit is to do the work. Do the work for everybody that is suffering because of this. Do the work for everybody who will not have access to health insurance anymore, or whose hospital is going to be closing down, or who has a family member in Alligator Auschwitz or fucking CCOT. Do the work for yourselves. Do the work so that you can live in a country where the water is safe to drink and the air is safe to breathe and the food is safe to eat, where we can do something about gun violence and we can have cheaper, cleaner electricity, where we can trust the things that are coming out of our government, where we can trust that we'll still have freedom of speech, where we can trust that our votes will count. Yeah, guys, do the work for all of us. Do the work for a better fucking country, because we don't have to live like this, guys. Jeff W's Animal says, I just can't handle having a felon president. I mean, yeah, especially considering what those felonies are. Jeff, it's fucking bananas. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the gifts and the likes and the shares and everything. If you want to join my Patreon, go to my website, jarrettberenstein.com. If you want to buy things from my store, jarrettberenstein.com/store. You can send gifts. You can subscribe on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. All that stuff helps me out a ton. But, of course, you do not have to. Beryl Knight says, what do you think about the situation in the Middle East and or having a third political party? Third political party, good or bad? The only way that more political parties can work, Beryl, is if we have ranked choice voting. And the Republican Party is against ranked choice voting. They're actually trying to make it illegal nationally. So, as much as we might have issues with the Democratic Party, the best way to empower other political parties being part of the process is to vote for more Democrats and to vote out Republicans from office. Without ranked choice voting, third parties can only ever be spoiler candidates. I'm also extremely skeptical of every third party because most of them only do these once every 4-year ego-driven cash grab spoiler candidate runs for president, as opposed to actually building up the kind of infrastructure and grassroots support to actually fucking win. And as far as what's going on in the Middle East is concerned, it's a fucking quagmire. It is the result of a bunch of really shitty people being very careless with people's lives for a very long time. Alrighty. Thank you for being here, everybody. Catch me here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have an excellent Wednesday, everybody. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.